Am I audible? Okay. I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. When proposition comes to the floor and tells you that their side of the house offers a policy which allows these people to exercise free choice, yet does not understand that the nature of these groups does not allow for this free choice that they're proposing, they lose this debate. In my speech today, I'm going to be giving you a bit of context and recharacterization before going into my rebuttal and then my positive matter, right? So for the context, where is this debate really set, right? So we live in a constantly changing and developing and modernizing world where atheism is becoming more prevalent, right? And this has a direct impact on these insular religious groups that we're talking about today, because these groups and communities become far more isolated, far more separated, and then in this, more determined to separate away from the general populace to maintain their religious beliefs, as this is something that is very integral to their identity, as P1 said today, right? So now to characterize these groups. These insular religious groups, as I said, are separated from society. Their aim as a community is to primarily get closer to God at all costs, right? We see that this is the nature of these religions. They're often very strict, with groups such as Mormonism having requirements on mixing with other people, garments that people have to wear, and things like they can't even drink coffee. And we see that these are very influential norms perpetuated inside these groups, and they dictate how these people live their lives. We see that one example, one broad example of groups like this is cults. We see that a lot of religious cults follow these sort of norms, the same sort of norms that isolated religious groups also follow, right? And we see that these groups are very, I'll take you later, we see that these groups are very, very keen to retain their membership, as religions on the whole are, but especially these groups being isolated, right? Then we look at the rites of passage in religions in general, right? These rites of passage are a series of events that are meant to make these young people more solidified in their religious beliefs, right? They're meant to become an official member of this group, like confirmation in Christianity. And the very nature of these religious rites of passage is to solidify their belief. So we see that when these very influential groups, these very isolated religious groups, put someone through a rite of passage, it is highly unlikely that the reason that they're doing this is to let the person leave the religion. We see that the nature of this rite of passage is that it's going to retain the person in the religion, right? Now when we look at temporary leave, we agree that this is going to look like these people leaving this religious group, not practicing the beliefs most likely, and geographically leaving the area, right? So now if we look at the actors, the people who are actually taking part in this rite of passage, right? These are young people and they're very easily influenced. Living in these sorts of religious groups, these isolated religious groups, means that this is likely what they have been brought up with their whole life. Their family is part of this group, all the people they look up to, love and respect are part of this group, so it's highly likely that they're going to be following the norms of this group even once they technically have the choice to leave, which I'll elaborate on later, right? So now when I talk about, I'll take you in a minute, the leaders of these religious groups, right? Their incentive is to retain members of the group, and their capacity for this is the large amount of influence that religions have on people in general, right? I'll take you after I finish my framing. So we don't see that, okay, then we look at religion, right? Religion is something that forms an integral part of somebody's identity, right? People are scared of the consequences of not following their religion, and it really becomes people's whole life. We don't need to provide a counter policy, and our metric for this debate is the side that is going to win is the side that best benefits our most vulnerable actor, which is the people going through these rites of passage, right? Our burden of proof today is that enacting a policy of insular religious groups having to incorporate temporary leave from the religion is going to be harmful to the people undergoing this rite of passage. I'll take your POI now.
Do you value the idea that people should never be allowed the choice to leave cults?
We don't think that people should never be allowed to leave cults or never have the choice to leave cults, but we see that the way these religious groups are giving people the choice to leave cults, it isn't really an actual choice, which I'm going to get into my positive matter, because of the nature in which these groups, the way they operate as a whole, right? So now I'm going to be getting into my rebuttal before my positive matter. So I think when we look at the two sides of the house, it's becoming quite clear to the floor that side proposition is arguing for a deontological perspective, right? They want autonomy of these actors despite the consequences. We're on side opposition, we're looking at a more utilitarian point of view. We're focusing on the consequences of this action, the consequences of making these cults permit people to leave, right? And we don't think that exercising this full autonomy in the way that proposition proposes is always going to be a positive thing. Now, if we look at the clash of choice and youth brought up by side proposition, Side proposition conceded that this religion becomes an integral part of your identity. And what we tell the floor today is, if this has become such an integral part of your identity, if this is basically your whole life, why are you just simply going to reject this and choose to leave the religious group, right? You're being permitted to, not made to. So a high likelihood is that you're not even going to choose to leave this group. And if you do, you're going to have huge reservations and likely feel a large amount of guilt, which is obviously not going to benefit yourself. Then we get onto the clash of true choice, which I believe P1's POI was about, right? So we don't see that people are choosing to come back to these insular religious groups under a rational sort of thought pattern, right? We see that these people are acting irrationally when they come back to these harmful groups due to the way that they have been indoctrinated by these religious beliefs and simply how young they are, right? We see that when people choose to come back to these groups, it's not because they've decided that they prefer it to the outside world always, it's because this is all they know, this is all they're used to, right? So now I'm going to get into my positive matter, but before that, any more POIs? No, our solution isn't to never let them leave at all, but our solution, we aren't providing a solution, we're providing the harms of your side of the house, right? My second speaker is going to get into that. But we're saying that when you require these religious groups to incorporate permitting people to leave, that these religious groups are just going to become far more intent on retaining the people in their religious groups, and are therefore going to, the nature of the manner that they go about informing people about these religious things is going to be far more intensified, and people are less likely to leave the group anyway because of what I'm going to get into in my positive matter, right? So now my main point is on utility. So we're characterizing something as good when it has the best outcomes for our most vulnerable actor, and we don't think that this policy has the best outcomes for our vulnerable actor, right? We think that this policy increases the risk of bad outcomes from the insular religious groups because they want people to stay in the religion at all costs. If they're forced into giving people a chance to leave the group, they're going to do everything in their power to A, discourage people from taking up this opportunity, and B, indoctrinate them to the point that when they do leave the group, they're not going to understand the outside world and will view it through the lens of this religious group, and therefore return to the group more steadfast in the beliefs that they previously held. So I think that answers both of your POIs, right? We see that people are going to be more likely to leave this religion or exercise their autonomy to leave this religion if they aren't given the chance through this religious right, this right policy, right? We see that it's far more, these people are going to notice that it's far more concerning that they aren't being allowed to leave the group, aren't being allowed to exercise their autonomy, and are therefore going to be more intent on exercising this authority and exercising their, right to leave the group, because we see that the indoctrination that they're going to be facing is actually less on our side of the house, right? We're going to see that people are going to be thinking, why would you allow me to leave this group? Why would you give me this choice if this group is in any way harmful, right? That is what they're going to be thinking under side proposition side of the house. So why is this likely to happen? Firstly, because of the nature of religion in general, right? As side proposition stated, religion has huge stakes in guilt, people feeling threatened by sin, and it taking up people's whole life. People's whole religion is a very important thing. Secondly, the incentives of this group is to retain people, and thirdly, the nature of these groups is the fact that people have grown up in this their whole life. Our actor is going to be so impacted because of their young age, the fact that they've grown up in the group, and the point of this right is to strengthen their religion. They also have many family ties, so we see that they're going to be far less likely to exercise their autonomy on proposition side of the house, and with that, I thank the floor.
Okay, oh my God, sorry. Can you hear me? Okay, cool. Okay, should I state my name and pronouns? My name is Mari Francois, my pronouns are she, her. Okay. I will be starting in 3, 2, 1. A side that dangerously titles their own vulnerable actors as cult participants, but at the same time argues that they shouldn't be in the cults that they title, is not a side that is going to win this debate. What am I going to be speaking about in my speech? Firstly, I'm going to do some reconstruction and some deconstruction of side opposition's case, and secondly, I'm going to be going over the harms of abuse of power and how that is infinitely more likely on the side of opposition, right? So firstly, what am I going to be rebuilding in this case? So what side opposition really needs to understand right now, and what we see that they're not really understanding, is what buy-in we have. Why are these why are these secular religions likely to buy into our side? Well, I first already went over this, right? Firstly, the religious leaders are likely to buy into this because the very nature of religion is that they believe what they believe is correct, right? This tells us that they will want to be recognized as valid religions. And our first tells you that the only way they can be recognized as valid religions is by opting into this policy. We tell you that. But secondly, as OP has actually already characterized, these religions value getting closer to God. They have told us this, like this is a direct quote, right? And we think that we only have this on our side because this rite of passage grants the fact that these individuals are then coming back and choosing God, firstly, but secondly, that they are coming back and choosing the religion. So we think that on that, we definitely do have buy-in. So I'll take you in a second. Okay, sorry, I'll take you now. Could you hurry it up a bit?
Sorry. Is your side for religions or people within religions?
That's a very interesting distinction that you've made, but surely the two aren't mutually exclusive. Like, religious people can be good and religions can be good at the same time. I mean, those two things can exist at the same time, right? Sorry, I think I got cut out for a second. But secondly, we just need to recognize that side opposition's harms in this debate are symmetric. They talk about the fact that people are being held within these religions. That is already happening on their side. This is already happening when these people don't have the rite of passage. And we've already spoken about the fact that this rite of passage still grants choice. The only harm that they can find in our case is the fact that people won't be exercising this choice. Guys, even if this is true, which we've already proven it isn't, even if it's true that people aren't exercising this choice, they have the choice. They have it, right? And that on a principled level is important. We value that as a principle, right? Okay, so on to my argument. What is my argument going to be in this debate? My argument is going to be why the abuse of power is much more prevalent on the side of opposition, right? So in order to understand this point, we need to understand what religion looks like. So in religions, you have followers and you have people who are in positions of power. So these are like your pastors, right? People who hold some sort of power over the general followers of the religion. So this guarantees that there are power imbalances within these religions. For better or worse, they do exist. What is the nature of power imbalances and how do people behave when they are in positions of power, right? So when people have power over others, there are those who use it rightly and there are those who abuse it. This is guaranteed in any position of power that people have, right? Politics, politicians, policemen, or preachers, all of them have power, all of them have the power to use it in different ways. Why is this problem particularly bad in insular religions under the side of opposition? Okay, so as my first has already characterized, and as opposition has characterized themselves as well, these religions are geographically and ethnically isolated. These communities are based around this religion, and thirdly, there is limited exposure to other cultures and other ways of life, okay? So on this basis, we can understand that this magnifies the issue of higher-ups abusing power. Let me just mechanize that quickly, right? So when you have a fake pastor under non-insular religions, under the status quo, right, within your religion who are perpetuating false ideas for their own gain, what you have in a non-insular religion is the input of those around you, firstly, to recognize that something is wrong, and secondly, you have personal exposure to recognize when something is not right, okay? So this looks like financial abuse, this looks like sexual abuse, things like that we think are quite prevalent, but we think that at the same time, these abusers do face retribution. Why do they face some level of retribution? Firstly, they face it because others around them can recognize what is wrong. Why can they recognize this? Because these religions exist in spheres where not everybody exists under the same reach of power. There are people who exist in these non-insular religions, where these non-insular religions function, who don't exist within the sphere of the non-insular religion.
POI.
Okay, I'll take you.
Do you think that the leaders of these insular religious groups are incentivized to keep people inside of these groups believing in this religion?
So I've really already gone over this. This is really an irrelevant POI. I'm not going to spend too much time over. I've already proved why they opt into it. I've already proved that they have the incentive to be valid as a religion, and secondly, that they have the incentive to want pure participation in their religion, to want people to want to participate in their religion on a pure level, right? So, okay, I'm going to leave that now. So to continue on my point, right, why these abuses are not likely to be as prevalent on our side. So if your pastor, sorry, where was I quickly? Okay, so the reason that this is retributed more often under non-insular religions, right, is because these people who are holding them accountable, firstly, some of them exist outside of spheres where the religion has powerful hold. That's very important because people who are not held under its power can then contest it and say, no, this is wrong. But secondly, because people within the religion itself are exposed, just hold on a second, are exposed to enough external references of behavior, like other pastors, like other people within the religion who aren't going to the same church as them, to recognize these problems. While it isn't guaranteed that all abusers are going to face retribution under these non-insular religions, it does happen infinitely more often. The retribution does happen infinitely more often under our side within these insular religions. Before I get into why, I'll take your final PO. I'm not going to take any more.
Then what's the issue your policy is trying to solve?
Okay, so I'm really trying to get into that. Please just give me a second. So why is this issue prevalent under side opposition and why is it not prevalent under our side? So firstly, while the incentive is the same to abuse this power within insular religions, the capacity to do so changes between side proposition and side opposition. Why is this? The capacity to hold this power and to abuse this power is significantly larger in insular religions because of the reasons that I just mentioned before. If you are the only voice in the room, you are the only person who these people are going to be listening to, right? And this is vital to understand. Okay, so opposition lacks these aspects that I previously mentioned that do get some level of retribution for these people abusing power. They lack the exposure. They lack the geographical context, right? They lack this. Again, if your pastor is the only person in your community or area telling you what to do, telling you what's right and telling you what's wrong, they have more power over you than if there are 3 or 4 or 5 pastors within your area telling you what's right and telling you what's wrong. That we feel is intuitive, that we feel that you really don't have that much space to argue. So our side takes away a large portion of their capacity to do this. Our side takes away a large portion of their capacity to lie to people, to manipulate people. Why is this? Because when you go out for this rite of passage, when you experience other things, other forms of behavior, other moral standards, you can now understand how that person is behaving in relation to how other human beings behave. Firstly, when they are in a position of power, but secondly, how they behave as a human being in general in the world. This is very, very important because you are being exposed to other morals. You're not just being exposed to the morals of that person who's telling you you need to pay 200 million rand into my car fund so that you can go to heaven, right? You're also hearing other input, and we think this is vitally important. Why? Because under our side, we have more accountability guaranteed for these abuses, and secondly, because we do not perpetuate abuse. Thank you.
Am I audible? Okay, my name's Siva. My pronouns are she, her. And I'll be beginning my speech in 3, 2, 1. When you've grown up your whole life knowing that God is the pivotal tipping point of whatever you do, you are going to carry that for the rest of your life. Whether you leave a religion or whether you stay in a religion, that is always going to be at the back of your mind. That's why we have some Christians in status quo who are like, oh, I don't really believe in this, but worst case scenario, it's actually real and I go to hell. Now, even the way you look at side proposition when they're up on the podium, metaphorically in your mind, they're like, oh, they're greater because they're on a higher level. But we have to see this operating within the harm and status quo, which side opposition don't refuse to engage with. The actual harm isn't the minority of insular religions being like the good ones that are the minority. The real harm is the majority, which we've identified as cults. And what happens when you don't have a proper mechanism that deals with cults? Then you have side proposition's case. The structure of my speech will go as follows. Firstly, I'm going to be just clarifying some characterizations that they've brushed over. Then I'll be going into some rebuttal. And then lastly, I'm going to be doing some even if weighing to show that even in their best case, we still win on our side. Not taken. Okay, so firstly, side proposition have chosen to take a soft line, not really showing us who they care about most in this debate, whether it's the MVA or whether it's like religion as a whole. We tell you we care most about the people who take part in these religions, and as we've characterized to you, that like the most harmful part of this is like the people who end up in like cults and people who end up in like such isolated places that they may not be able to get help. So firstly, when people go and follow religion, like they want religion and they feel like feelings about religion. They think it's really great. They think that this person, whoever their God is going to do really great things for them if they do A, B, and C. But we have to note that there's an element of shame. There's an element of when priests tell you, if you do this, you're going to feel shameful. And we understand that when you are isolated and everyone like this thinks, and everyone you know thinks like this, people like your parents, people like your friends think like this, you are actively going to feel this more intensely versus in like normal major religions where you go outside and you could meet someone who's not religious at all. Okay, we think that's something that's a harm inherent to their side. Next we say that like we justify like the cult context because, as I've told you, that's like the most harmful place in which this occurs. And then next like we have to emphasize the like relationship between religious like leaders and religious followers. Religious leaders, I'll take you just now, are like central to religious followers and how they conduct religion. Like when you look at a religious leader, you see an extension of God. You see the person who is all-knowing, all-high, and like all-powerful on earth. You see the person who, if you have to like, sorry, can you still hear me? If you have to like, follow their words, you are more likely to get to God. This is the mentality, this is the psyche. And if the goal of major religion of any religion is to keep as many people as possible following your religion, then what do you think priests are going to do? We told you from our first speaker that priests are going to want to co-opt this. They're going to want to say, hey, you're giving us another mechanism to just keep people. Because when you've been told your whole life, this is good, you have to follow this, everything else is bad, this is why we're all isolated, you are going to think to yourself that this is the only way to go. And even when you go out and see other things, one, you're either going to be shocked about other things and be like, oh hex nah, or two, you're going to go into what's this? A whole state of my priest said no, so therefore I'm not even gonna try this, because in your mind, you've been told that all these things are wrong. I'll take you now.
How many governments do you know have recognized a harmful cult as an actual religion in their country?
Well, we're not saying that harmful cults are being recognized by government. That's just kind of trying to stray me off my point. Don't try to confuse me, speaker. But the one thing we have to recognize is that a lot of cults start off as looking like religion, and this is the main issue. Sure, in status quo, we'll look at something like Mormonism being okay and being somewhat okay, but in 50 years it could become and turn into a cult. That's what we have to look at in secular religion. And the whole nature of these religions is that they don't want people to leave, and even if it isn't all good, that's why they isolate themselves, and that's the major harm here, because isolation is the mechanism they use to keep people. Are there any more POIs? Okay, so I'm going to be going into some main points that I just want to quickly rebut. So we've told you why, especially my first speaker, why autonomy doesn't land, because the issue with autonomy is that you're not making true choice because you're influenced by religious leaders. Secondly, this isn't fair for religion as a whole, and even if this argument stands, we would want it to be better for people within religion, because in this context of this debate, if a cult is identified as a religion, then inside propositions reasoning, then that means this is better for the cult, making that not stand. And thirdly, I've told you why the power imbalance from their second speaker does not stand and actually works in favor of our side, because we tell you it's that very power imbalance, it's that very fear of doing something wrong that gets you into situations of vulnerability. And when we don't prioritize the members of these cults, we end up taking them into the harms, which I'm about to explain in my argument. So my argument of the harm of the policy. Any more POIs?
Please engage with our policy where we detailed that this recognized religion will only be able to maintain its status as a recognized religion if it compels this policy.
But the issue is we see that this is just making religious leaders trying to be more sneaky. We can't guarantee that isolated religions aren't doing things in private that we aren't able to see in public. Please come back in your third and explain this, Speaker. But my argument about the harms of this policy. In this argument, I aim to prove why, even if our principle falls, our MVA's mental state is still going to be damaged. So characterizing to you fear and love in what's this religion. So even though we understand loving your God is something very beautiful, something very spiritually enticing, we believe that fear is a much more powerful element to a lot of religions. This is why concepts like hell exist. If you don't do this, you're going to hell. Earth is a temporary state. Hell is forever. If you are scared of hell, nothing can entice you to do the opposite, right? And community and youth, especially authority within religions, if you're being told constantly that you will go to hell for A, B, C, and D, you will think, I'm going to go to hell for A, B, C, and D, therefore I will not even interact with A, B, and C, and D, even if I go into the outside world. So the analysis I give you is that there is pressure to submit to authority because you see these people in a different light and in a higher light. Thirdly, the rationality of youth, because you're more likely to be influenced into thinking this way when you're younger. This is why kids don't do certain things like drink and smoke, because they're not able to make the rational decision to drink or smoke. And then thirdly, the information of your actor, because the cult is the only thing the actor has ever known, going outside is most likely going to A, shock them, or B, even if they try to do outside activities, they're going to be too scared to interact with the outside. So all of these are harms, and these are harms inherent to side propositions policy, because their policy perpetuates these harms. And the impact here is that impact of quality, because even if these people go into the outside world, the harms of the outside world are going, the harms of the cult are going to be perpetuated when they leave. And even if the debate is about normal insular groups or whatever, you will never be able to give them true choice, because side proposition can never guarantee you that. Thank you.
Second speaker for side opposition, calling for the first speaker from side opposition. Stay here.
Oh, sorry, I just need a few minutes to organize my papers. Okay. Turn to France, pronouns she, her. I'll begin in 3, 2, 1. Side opposition concedes many things. They concede that young people are easily coerced.
They concede that religions want to grow and gain followers. They concede the harms within these cults that are prevalent on their side. They concede that people can be coerced into not leaving. But what they don't address is the conclusion of these concessions, that because of all these 5 reasons why we cannot allow these religions to prevent people from experiencing the world and going out there and exercising their autonomy. But firstly, let's go into major strategic flaws that we've had from side opposition. Firstly, we have many unresponded mechanisms through this entire debate, right? Alex spent so much time explaining to you why young people don't opt into religions onto their side because of this whole idea of YOLO, this natural ability to question yourself, and the base level of exposure that people have with religions, right? We explained to you why under their side, this is going to be perpetuated because of the lack of information people have about these religions, and secondly, and most importantly, the lack of buy-in these religions have, and I'm going to explain to you why that is perpetuated and harmful specifically on their side. But thirdly, and most importantly, the entire case is arguing from the basis that these cult religions are going to be recognized as religions on our side. We've already explained to you in our policy why won't that happen, right? Because what is our policy, right? In order to be recognizing a religion in our world, we have to be able to give this law, and these religions have to abide by this particular law. This means that you are required for your youth to take part into that leave to be a geographical free and religiously free religion, right? We think that cults inherently will not uphold this particular law, specifically because of the abusive nature that cults have specifically on their side, and I'm going to explain why that harm is harmfully perpetuated on their side because of this segregation and because of this exclusion. And the strategic flaw is that their framing hasn't engaged with our policy, and they've just been running a negative case and haven't explained to us why comparatively they're way better off on their side, right? But 2 clashes that this came down to. 2 things. Firstly, who is better for followers? And secondly, who is better for religion? Let's look at who is better for followers, right? What does proposition tell us? They tell us that individuals can be able to choose for themselves if they want to stay in this cult or so forth, right? What is the criteria of choice? 3 things. Firstly, you have to be rational. Secondly, you have to be informed. And thirdly, you mustn't be coerced, right? How are you not informed on side proposition side when you are in these types of religions that are secluded from the rest of the world? It means that any information you get regarding, like, for example, if you're going for advice or you're going to do particular research about your religion, we think that everything in that particular environment is going to be in favor for the religion that you're favoring. For example, when you go to an Amish priest, he's not going to tell you about the truth about how the real world is actually going to be. He's going to perpetuate the faith that is going to be happening in that particular instance. How do we think that they are, these individuals are going to be coerced? We think that coercion is more likely to exist on their side, primarily because of the fact that these religions are secluded, and it's based on the assumption that these individuals are going to be engaging with other people within this religion, right? We think that these other people that are in this religion that are also secluded are going to influence these other individuals, right? We think that because of the fact that they don't uphold the criteria of choice, we think that choice is being undermined. And secondly, and principally speaking, we think that we should allow people in order to choose their religions. Why? Well, religion is important for 3 main reasons. It is important because it does 3 things. Firstly, it governs your entire life. Secondly, there are eternal consequences. And thirdly, you are omnipresent. What does that mean? It means that this is a life or death situation. So you need to be able to choose whether or not you're going to opt into a religion, and we think that that is principally unjust on their side. But thirdly, and most importantly, why we think we're better for most vulnerable actors, I'll take you at 6 minutes. We think that we're just better in terms of accountability. We tell you that because of the nature of coercive pastors, specifically in these religions, because they have the incentive and also the capacity to do so, they are more likely to not be held accountable, because these people aren't going to actually report them to the police because they don't have the capacity to do so, and because they're coerced. Versus on the comparative on our side, when we allow people to go out into the world, experience the world, and see what is actually right or wrong, and they don't allow these individuals to leave, right? And fourthly, why do we think that people aren't going to enter these cults to begin with, right? The first thing that we have to understand is that cults are based on this abuse of power, right? We tell you that that is perpetuated even further on that side because of the merely fact that they prevent people from leaving and they're secluded, right? The fact that people cannot leave is essential in defending what... Okay, let me actually take you now. Let's go.
you think a 16-year-old gay boy in the Catholic Church will suddenly, like for example in the Mormon Church, will suddenly leave the church, go see gay people in the streets, and suddenly think, oh my gosh, it's okay to be gay?
No, but we think that that entire example is based on the fact that this person is not going to be like comfortable in that religion. And like that was just like a weird POI, by the way. But we just think that like specifically for that like 16-year-old gay individual that is going to be like going out and like seeing these other like people that are gay and so forth, we think that the religious like teachings that they've been taught their entire lives, we think that that's going to be like an inherent deciding factor of whether or not they're going to actually like sin and like leave their religion. But we think that even if this gay boy decides to leave the religion, we think that he chooses this particular thing, and we think that that is more justified because in their world this gay individual never gets to see these other gay people celebrate their pride. We think that they never get to see these things, and therefore even if by like the Catholic Church and by the religion this person ends up leaving, we think that they're still justified because we still allow people to choose properly, because we give them more information rather than on their side when they don't allow these individuals to actually exercise this autonomy. But let's move on to who is better for religion, right? Incentives of religions are two things. Firstly, they are able to spread messages and like they want to like reach as many people as possible, right? Let's contextualize what is the world that we're actually living in, right? Why are young people specifically leaving the church and status quo? We see two reasons. Firstly, people are continuously challenging the ideas of religion, and secondly, people see how abusive powers treat their people, right? Why are they likely to buy in specifically in our world? Because of three reasons. Firstly, religion won't be recognized if they don't exercise this policy, so this religion has an incentive to actually abide by the law and actually gain viewers and certain things like that, right? And we think that secondly, insular communities would have been previously like marginalized, so they think that, yeah, I can take it, let's go. Okay, so we think that insular communities have been previously marginalized, and I think this is a very important point of characterization because we think that these insular communities really do have an incentive to grow and really do have an incentive to reach as many people as they possibly can. That is the incentive of these religions, right? And we think that on our side, religions value these beliefs, and we think that when these individuals like go out and actually come back to choose that religion, we think that is a justified thing because we think that we uphold the morals of choice, and we think that it's way better for somebody to choose a religion and to choose their faith rather than being indoctrinated into a system because they were born it and because it's been morally arbitrary. Because if we're being honest, you don't choose the religion that you are in. You don't choose the where you're born or your race or certain things like that. But under our side of the house, we give people the ability to go out to see what choices they have available, and if they still make that same choice, we're still fine with that. Even if they don't, we still uphold their autonomy, and we still uphold the fact that they will be able to leave these abusive relationships. Panel, I've never been more proud to oppose, but we can see that from their side, they obviously are not preventing abuse from happening on their side, specifically for these secluded environments that they don't allow people to leave, and that for all those reasons specifically, we think that we have won. Thank you, so proud to propose.
Am I audible? Can everyone hear me? Okay. Hi everyone, I'm Caitlin, third speaker beside Op. I'm grade 10, my pronouns are she, her. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. A world in which a policy implemented does the exact opposite of what it is intended to do is a world in which we do not want to live, and this is side propositions world. Panel, I urge you within my speech that I will be proving as to why the benefits do not stand on their side and how they intentionally do more harm than good through the use of their policy, and why as a floor we cannot stand for this inside propositions world. First, I'd like to do some clarifications, right? Just to clarify, cults will exist on both both sides, right? We find that Prop wants to tell you, panel, that cults won't exist on their side, and they give the following reasons as to this, right? They explain why, when the policy is implemented, insular religions will want to become a main religion, and so therefore they are going to buy into this policy. They tell you that because of this, cults are far less likely to exist on their side, and this is very untrue for the following reasons. Okay, the first one is that now because of this policy, religious leaders will be more focused, will be less focused on the actual religion at hand and maintaining the standard of religion that is practiced within their cult or in circular religious group, and more focused on retaining members, right? Because of the policy that is going to be exercised inside Proposition's world, we find that it is far more likely on their side for the standard of religion to drop, and I will get into this further when I disprove their benefits, but we find that it is more likely for the standard of religion to drop on their side due to the shift in focus that will be happening within these religious groups or cults. We find that religious leaders will now be more focused and will prioritize retaining members, because that is the way in which religion functions. You need members for the religion to be effective, right? And if they cannot retain members, then it is ultimately going to be very negative for their cult or in circular group, right? Because of this, I'll take you just now. Because of this, they're going to be more incentivized to focus on retention rather than maintaining the standard of religion that is practiced within their groups, ultimately harming religion as a whole. Before I get into the rest of this clash, I will take your POI.
Do you think that these religious or these cult leaders, as you say, believe that they are wrong in what they believe and that people are going to recognize that when they leave?
No, I don't think that, because when you practice something, you practice it because you think it is the best thing or like the goodest thing, like to believe in or to stand for, right? Religious is based off like you believe in something when it aligns with your morals and your beliefs, and when you see yourself in a religion, you practice it because you think it is good, not because you think it is inherently bad. And it is not because these religious leaders think that their cult is bad that they will now be more focused on retaining members, but rather the fact that they are wanting members to stay in the cult purely because they know that what is being done in the cult, or they believe so that what is being done in the cult is good, and they need members to exercise this good to the fullest extent, and that is why they'll be focused on retention. Thank you for your POI. So now that we see the second part of this, why this policy will be ineffective, is if that is a bad insular religion, right? If it is a bad insular religion group, and it doesn't allow people to exercise their autonomy and leave, people will realize it is a bad group, and because they are not given this false choice or false sense of autonomy on Proposition side. I'll be getting into this later on about false choice, but ultimately they will be able to realize that if there's a restriction of autonomy, they are in the wrong religion, one, but two, they are in the wrong insular group and are therefore supporting the wrong things, right? Furthermore, even if this policy does play out in Proposition's best case, we find that because of the characterizations and framing we have done based on the types of people that this emotion applies to, and the types of indoctrination that happens within these religious groups, we find that they look at the world through a different lens. Panel, my second speaker reiterated this to you over and over again when she explained that when you grow up in a certain way, certain culture, religion, you grow up believing certain things and behaving in certain aspects based on the people that are around you and based on the way of things that they believe, right? We find this very prevalent in religious groups such as insular groups because of the small community and the beliefs that are fostered within that community. We therefore find that if this policy is implemented and the youth are able to go out into a world that isn't their bubble, we see that one, they will either feel shock and they'll think it is so crazy and it's so different and it's going to scare them that they're not going to buy into it because it's completely different to something they have seen their whole life and spent their whole life doing or believing. But two, not open themselves up to exploring the outside world and never end up leaving the insular group because it is so different and because it is culturally and religiously different to what they believe, but also what they've been indoctrinated to believe and the intense beliefs that they have fostered within their insular groups. Furthermore, I just wanted to prove that because of this, it is on Proposition's world, autonomy is restricted without these people even realizing. Panel, what I mean by this is that when you are indoctrinated to the extremist extent because of the policy, because indoctrinations become so bad on Proposition's world, because religious leaders become so incentivized to keep people in these groups, indoctrinations comes so intense, they therefore create a mindset within these people that all their choices are based in what they have been told to believe rather than what they actually believe, right? This becomes a non-realized form of the restriction of autonomy to the most vulnerable actor that Proposition is trying so hard to defend, right? Proposition wants autonomy, right? This is one of the benefits they give on their side. However, I've just disproved how autonomy, one, doesn't exist on their side, but two, they actually restrict it, therefore disproving their point on autonomy. I'll take your POI.
Why is giving the option for these people to leave any different from your side where you say that people can choose themselves to just exit these cults?
So I've already addressed this in my clash on the policy and how if it is effective or not, when I stated that if the religion that they are in is bad, and if the cult is bad and they have a restriction on autonomy, they will realize this. They will realize that it is bad because they feel the restriction on their choice. Right, I'm not going to spend any more time on that. I'll be moving in the three main benefits that we got from side Proposition. I've already disproved their first benefit on choice, right? Which we found doesn't exist on their side, one, but two, is restricted on their side even more with the implementation of this policy. Furthermore, I'm going on to their second benefit, which is the high standard of religion. So religious leaders, I've already spoken about this a little, but I just want to clarify. Religious leaders are incentivized to keep people practicing their religion because they believe it is good, right? We've got this framing already from my first and second. We then see that if this policy is implemented, it actively encourages people to leave religion. This shifts the focus of religious leaders from maintaining a high quality of religion to now prioritizing that we have enough members to even practice the religion in the first place. This shift obviously decreases the quality of the religion and the extent to which it is practiced, right? Furthermore, we see that when people leave the religion and come back, we see that on Proposition's world, they state that they have the choice to actively pursue the religion when they re-enter this bubble. We find that though, because of this coming back, if you come back into a religion in which a bad religion, we see that now you are actively pursuing a bad religion and you are actively pursuing inherent harm. Floor, I urge you to side with the side that benefits your most vulnerable actor, one, but two, does not restrict their autonomy in any way, and I've never been so proud to oppose. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rosemary, reply speaker. I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. When side proposition has come to the floor and presented us with a really uncharitable case where all the harms are asymmetrical and the benefits are symmetrical, they simply cannot win today's debate. In my speech today, I'm going to go through a few strategic flaws we've seen from side proposition, and then I'm going to break down clash by clash why we win today's debate. So the first and major strategic flaw we've seen from side proposition today is that they've been hugely uncharitable with our case. They've been straw-manning every single one of our arguments. They've been painting us as anti-religion. We are not anti-religion. We just do not want religion to be undermined by the focus being forced to shift because of a harmful policy, right? This is completely mischaracterizing our entire case. They've really misunderstood what we're trying to prove here today, right? So now to get into the first and what I see as the most important clash in today's debate, which is on autonomy, like the principle of choice, right? Proposition came to the floor, and their whole case seems to rely on this policy actively upholding autonomy, where throughout all three of our speeches we have proven to you why it actually undermines this authority and undermines these religions as a whole, right? We've proven to you that due to the nature of these insular religious groups, under this policy, people are given the illusion of choice. They are not given actual choice. And these insular religious groups are forced into trying to put more energy into retaining members than actually practicing their spiritual beliefs, because otherwise, without these people, they do not have a religion, right? And we see that that is an important part of religious groups, as actually said by P1, right? So on our side of the house, we've proven that proposition is going to be far more harmful than the counterfactual, where these groups are more focused on their religion than on their retention, right? Because we feel like in our side of the house, if people genuinely do not believe that this religion is right for them, they're going to leave the religion, right? Because, and we're going to be more likely to do this, because the religious leaders are far more focused on actually practicing the religion than trying to retain members, right? So now we've got a bit of analysis on how our side of the house is better for followers of the religion and the religious group as a whole. So proposition came to the floor and told us, with regards to the followers, that they're going to be able to choose to leave and will rationally evaluate whether they want to come back to the religion or not, right? And on opposition, we replied that these people cannot rationally evaluate whether they want to come back to the religion, whether it is good for them, due to the nature of how influential these religious groups are. They're insular groups, they've grown up here, this is their entire life, right? We see that under this policy, religions are more incentivized to indoctrinate people because there's a far higher risk of losing members. They're suddenly being forced by a policy to give people the option of actively leaving, or actively encourage them to try life outside of this religious group, right? With regards to religion as a concept, proposition said that people's faith is going to be stronger because they choose to return. And on opposition, we replied that these religious leaders are far more focused on retention under their policy than actually preaching their faith, right? Which means that the religion is actually undermined. So on our side of the house, we actually actively uphold religion as a concept in general, right? So now if we get on to the morality of religious leaders, right? Proposition was hugely uncharitable, painting us as trying to say that we think that religious leaders are bad and don't actually believe that what they're saying. We've proven to you that the issue with these religious leaders under their policy is that their focus is shifting from preaching to retaining members, right? Whether they believe in their religion or not is really a moot point, right? However, we see that under either side of the house, their focus shifts, right? Now, if we look at the issue of leaving these religious groups, on the proposition side of the house, the policy forces these leaders to give people the choice. It forces them to encourage people to try time outside of the group. So as I said, they're becoming far more worried about retention than practicing their religious belief. Whereas on opposition side of the house, the leaders do not have this worry. Their worry is about creating a beautiful faith for their people to practice, and people are going to be able to, far more likely to make a rational choice as to whether they want to stay in this religion or whether they want to leave. And we see that if they notice that they're not being given the chance to leave, they're likely to realize that this is not a healthy religion for them to be practicing, not a healthy group for them to be in. And with that, I have never, ever been prouder to oppose. Thank you.
Thank the opposition for their reply, putting on the proposition reply. Yeah.
Three, two, one. We think that side opposition has been an insensitive side in today's debate. We think that they've stood here with their Western-centric view on what religion is and the idea of morality and how we can judge other people's morality, and then decided to debase all insular religions as being cultish. We tell you that this is a harmful characterization on side opposition side of the case, and we think that this is an important part of why they lost today's debate. In my first, I gave you an analysis on why it's so important to view this debate from a non-biased world, especially from not looking at through other dominant religions. And we tell you that, first of all, the reason is because we cannot judge the morality of somebody else's religion. But we also gave you the important distinction that in order to implement this policy, you would have to be a registered religion anyway in that country. You'd have to be a recognized religion. And we tell you that we have never had a recognized harmful cult as a registered religion in that country. We think that side opposition doesn't have a frame of reference to decide what is bad. We also want to engage with side opposition side on today's debate, and we want to engage what our biggest harm is according to them, and tell you why they do not achieve it. So first of all, we tell you that their biggest harm for our side of the debate is that people are going to be more intent on keeping these people. Now, not only is this assumption or is this argument based on the assumption that all of these cults are bad, and it's a bad thing that these people are going to stay in the religion that they're not only born into, but that they have grown up in, and that they're going to be horribly harmed through this religion. But they also tell us that even if these religions are incredibly harmful, they never engage with these two mechanisms. That first of all, these people don't lack complete experience. We characterize to you that people will have the absolute base level of experience, that they will be able to see the outside world, because we don't think that we are living in Stonehenge. We don't think that they are some tribe in the Amazonian rainforest. We think that these are religions, and we gave you these two examples of what these insular religions look like and how integrated they do become. But we also tell you that because the religious leaders believe what they're telling you, that they believe that you also believe what you see, you're not likely to be persuaded by other people when you go out into the real world. It's the same way that if you take a trip to Saudi Arabia, your Christian pastor is not likely to tell you all of these reasons why you should continue to believe in Christianity after this. We don't think that that's something that stands on side opposition side of the house at the end of today's debate. The importance of this is that this is the most impactful harm that side opposition has for our side of the debate. They have to prove that under our side, we are still going to, we're going to remain these people are going to remain intent on keeping people within their religion. And when we prove that, first of all, we don't think that it's necessarily a bad thing that these people do remain intent if they are within their religion. But second of all, that these religious leaders are not likely to make these people more indoctrinated for all of the reasons we've given above. We already win this debate. We also tell you that side opposition decides to run a negative case in this debate, and it's harmful for them. First of all, they decide to tell us that on our side of the house, people will never be able to leave. They're going to take this 2-week leave of absence, and then they're going to be enveloped in it forever. But then on their side of the house, they tell us that people can opt in and opt out of these religions whenever they want, never engaging with the mechanisms that we've given to you by the idea that people are within these religions all of the time. They're born into these religions, it's within their community, all of their friends and family are within this religion, but on their side they can suddenly opt in whenever they want and opt out whatever. But they also never analyze their own mechanizations, that they tell you that for 3 speeches, when people go out into the outside world for their 2-week leave of absence, that they're suddenly going to be shocked, that they're suddenly going to be scared, that they're suddenly going to have this horrible revelation that the whole world is evil, but they never analyze why that doesn't exist under their side of the house. We think that side proposition is a side that is able to prove that not only is it going to be beneficial for religions as a whole, for the recognition of these religions, and for retaining people that have true choice, but also that side opposition cannot prove that we are harmful in today's debate for all of these reasons proposed.
Thank you for that debate, and that brings an end to this round. We will deliberate all the things we need to come back and announce the winner.